but we're still together. Starting off a marriage rough, but now we're going to be together, and I'm just so grateful for what you guys have done and for thinking about me and caring about me, just a normal person. So it really touches me, and thank you.
You've been very brave, actually. You've been incredibly brave. We saw what was happening inside of that prison. So you really have been very, very brave.
We're just glad to have you home.
That's Donald Trump speaking with Joshua Holt, a man who went to Venezuela hoping to secure the hand of marriage of his true love and ended up staying there unexpectedly for about 2 years, missing 2 Thanksgivings. He'll be home for his first Thanksgiving in 3 years this year. Josh, thank you for joining me today. I want to talk about your 2 years in that democratic socialist country and the hellhole prison you were in, what you learned from the experience, and really what it means to take your rights for granted. Because as I read the articles and the things that have been written about you, it seems like you really had no idea what you were in for when you're over there. And you suffered even worse than the regular citizens who are eating out of dumpsters and selling their possessions to stay alive. So welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing awesome. How does it feel to be home?
Feels good. Everything's finally settling down, so it's nice.
So I want to start with the first time I heard the story. I don't remember what it was, but I took to my wife and I said, man, this guy went over there to get his wife and they locked him up. This is insane. And she goes, well, you know, I know sometimes Venezuela can be a really dangerous place to travel. I know you served as an LDS missionary and from time to time they would pull him out. What was the situation at that time? I know Chavez was dead, Maduro was in. Looking back, were there people who were saying don't go there, or was it kind of a window of safety where you thought it was okay, or were you just thinking about one thing and one thing only, get my wife and let's get married?
Well, I'd say yes to all that.
Okay.
I mean, if you ask my family, they say they told me not to go, but I don't remember that. Well, when you look at the embassy did not actually have any type of thing published on their website in Venezuela saying, do not come to Venezuela. When I got there, the exchange rate was $1 to every 800 bolivares. Last time I looked, it was $1 to over 2.5 million bolivares. So you can tell the difference just in the money, in the currency. So there weren't riots going on while I showed up. I knew that there are dangerous places. My wife told me, she said, hey, there's places in Venezuela that are dangerous. And I just replied with, well, I mean, there are dangerous places in the United States, there are dangerous places in Mexico, there's dangerous places in everywhere. But if I'm with a native, then I knew that I would be safe, or at least that's what I thought. We never went outside during the dark. We never went in places where I shouldn't be. So we were safe. But the one place where we thought we were 100% safe, in our bed, was the actual place that was not where we shouldn't have been.
It's funny you talk about that when you say your family told you and you didn't hear them. So my family grew up going to Mexico. We went to Baja California. My great-grandfather had been going there since the 50s. That's where Rubio's Baja Grill is from. And it's interesting because as a kid, it was never a big deal. When I became a teenager, they had some incidents with La Policia, taking people's cars and roughing them up and stealing their wallets, stuff you hear about in Rocky Point today. When I got older, it was the Mexican army was down there, and the guys with the machine guns that you didn't even look at, you look in the eyes, but they were no nonsense. You didn't have to worry about them too much. They were just terrifying. I went back for the last time in 2003, 2004, around 4th of July, and I looked around and said, I don't recognize this place. Like, we're never going back here again. I have friends who still go and say that it's safe, but two things. One, when you said it's 2 million bolivars, 2.5 or 2 million bolivars to the dollar?
Well, I haven't looked at it in over like a month, but the last time I looked, it was over 2.5 million.
Did you feel like a millionaire when you were down there? Because
no, I did not feel like a millionaire when I was down there.
So you go down there, you meet your wife in the Dominican Republic originally, right? That's where you guys kind of meet up.
Yeah.
Take us through. So then you go home, she goes home, and you decide you're going to get married. So you go down there to pick her up, maybe to ask her hand. She's got 2 kids. Take us through the story, where your mind's at, and then what happened when you got there.
Well, so yeah, we went to the Dominican Republic, and that's when I asked her to marry me. She said yes, because the whole idea of the Dominican Republic was to make sure that she was who she said she was, and I was who I said I was. Which we realized that we were.
So that could have gone horribly wrong. That could have been a big waste of money.
Yeah, it could have. But luckily, it was we were the right people. I mean, we had talked via video chat, and so we really knew who one another were. We just wanted to see, in person if we were still that way. So we did that, and a month later, I went to Venezuela. When I got to Venezuela, I was there on a Sunday night, morning, and we got married on that Thursday and went on my honeymoon. It was actually kind of funny. Right after we got married, we went to the airport the next morning. We got there at 7 in the morning and didn't end up leaving on our flight until about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, because the plane was, and I haven't actually talked about this before, but the plane was actually taken by the government because of drug usage, is what was being told.
Happens to me on Southwest like every third time I fly. Totally normal. Nothing weird about that at all.
Yeah.
So they took your drugs. Interesting. What happened after that?
Went on our honeymoon, got back a week later, had a couple of fun days with her, the kids, and her family, just getting to know them. And then that dreadful day came. It was a Thursday morning. It was exactly 2 weeks to the day that we had been married. I just remember being woken up by her 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning-ish. And she just said, Joshua, they're entering into all the apartments. And I mean, what are you talking about? They're entering all the apartments. And that's when my ears and my brain started to realize what was going on. I could hear screaming. I could hear kids crying. And the police, what they were doing, were actually going into every single apartment and asking just for men. So when they finally arrived to our apartment about a half hour later, they just asked for if there were any men in the apartment. She said, yeah, my husband. And then they came in, checked my stuff, and left, which was kind of weird. Then when they came back about 40 minutes later, that's when they came to take me. They took me saying that there was nothing absolutely wrong. They said, we just want to make sure you have no problems in the United States and no problems in Venezuela. So, I mean, thinking about it as in from America, I understand that they wanted to check stuff, but at the same time, I knew something fishy was going on just because of the things that were around me.
So they told you they were there to help. Did they take you out in cuffs, or they walk you out the door willing? I mean, that's fascinating. What happened?
No, they just walked me out the door. I walked down with them. Well, this was the interesting thing. When they first got into the apartment the second time, they kind of barged through the door, and they came rushing up to me with their guns pointing, and the first thing they asked me was, where's your suitcase? Why the heck is a police officer going to come ask me where my suitcase is? So from that point on, by the time I left, we were going down the stairs, and I kid you not, every single time we saw a police officer, the police officer would look at me and say, who's he, in Spanish, and the guy that I was with would always respond with the same thing. Oh, he's the white guy. He's the gringo. And they would always go, oh, okay. I'm just like, what? What the heck is that?
That seems like kind of an obvious conversation, right? Who's that guy? The white guy. Oh, okay. Thought that was LeBron James.
I know.
I was confused.
Connecting the dots there. So
it's a little short.
From that point on, I mean, they threw me into the back of a truck. They were supposed to go down the mountain because my wife's apartment was up on a mountain. They were supposed to go down it, but instead they went up, and they went to a building that was still under construction, and that's where they began to say lots of racial things, hit me over the head. They lined me up and dry fired their weapons at me.
Whoa.
Yeah, there was a lot of bad things that happened, and that's really when I became afraid of my life. Thought that there was no way I was going to survive that day.
So, we don't know each other, but I've been doing this podcast for a while. My very first guest on this show was a guy named Andy Andrews, who wrote a book called How to Kill 11 Million People. And it's kind of a clickbait catchy title, right? But it's about how when two things, he says 11 million because the Nazis killed several million Europeans and Germans before they killed all the Jews. But the way they did it with the Jews is they came in and basically said, look, the communists are going to be here soon. The Reds are going to kill you all. We're going to take you to a safe place. We're here to help. They put their guns down. They got the religious leaders to come persuade them to get on the trains. And he goes, all they did really is just lie to him and say, we're here to help you. Come with us. And the whole mantra is once you're there on their turf and once they have the guns and you don't and they make you feel like you're at ease, once you're on the train, it's over. Like you've given up all your control. I'm actually going to do a video about Jim Jones this week about what happened to the people in Guyana because it's the 40-year anniversary of that. But very same thing. They come to you saying, hey, we're friends. We're here to help. Maybe they call you a gringo. And then they take you up the hill instead of down. What was happening with your wife at this point? Was she with you, or did they keep her at the apartment complex?
So they told her to stay at the apartment complex. And from that point on, as soon as I went out, she knew something was going on. So she went looking for me because I'm the only gringo that was in the city. Everyone knew exactly who I belonged to, and they started telling her, hey, go up the mountain. So she took a bus up the mountain, and that's when her and some of her friends found where I was at and started screaming at all the people. So they put me in the truck and took me away again. And I went to another place where they ended up parking the truck. They started breaking, private property. They started They started shooting at people this time. I had to actually hide behind the wheel well of the truck that I was in. It was like that for about an hour until they finally took me to the police station. And the police station, they interrogated me for about 4 hours trying to get information about me, why I was there, my family, also like bank stuff, Social Security, weapons that I had here in America, saying I was this bad person. I don't know, they just went on and on.
And this was happening in inglés o en español? Todo. ¿Qué hablaron ustedes?
A little bit of both.
How's your Spanish? Can you rhyme with them in Spanish?
I can do pretty good.
Okay.
I served my mission Spanish speaking for 2 years, and then being held in jail for 2 years. That helps.
I would have pretended I was Chinese, honestly, at this point. I wouldn't have spoken either language very well, but I'm sure you were terrified. I had read online that, that this was a subsidized housing complex that was prone to high crime. It was built by Hugo Chavez. Obviously, I wasn't there. Is this something that was normal in the neighborhood, to have the cops come in and barge into people's houses, or do you think you were being targeted? Because I also read about a black bag that was planted on you. What say you?
That is actually true. Apparently that happened a handful of times. It's called an OLP in Spanish, which is translated to freedom of the people or freedom of the city.
Okay.
I don't want to say it. But basically what they go in and do is they go kill people and take people and plant drugs or plant whatever they want on whoever they want so they can get their numbers of whatever numbers they need. That day that they took me, they killed 17 people, 5 are still missing, and over 30 went to jail.
Whoa.
So you tell me.
Didn't know that. Democrat socialist country. That's intense. I actually read, so I didn't know that, but I read that later what was it? The number 2 official in Venezuela's ruling socialist party, Diosdado Cabello, described you, Josh, as the head of U.S. espionage in Latin America and said you would stay behind bars.
Here I am.
You're basically Jason Bourne.
Well, I'm a little fatter than Jason Bourne, but I'll take it.
I don't know. Have you seen the last one? I know you've been gone for a while, but in the last movie, he's not quite as fit as the first 3. You might have to catch up on those.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I missed a lot in the last couple of years.
So you were accused of stockpiling weapons and attempting to destabilize the government as if they weren't already doing that on their own. What happened after you got interrogated? You go straight into the clink? What happened next?
We got interrogated for a while. Then the SEBIN, which is the wannabe CIA of Venezuela, the actual director came and got us, took pictures with me, not with my wife, but with me, because we were his trophy. I was his trophy.
Is it like an Iron Man where they put you in front of the flag and held you up with a a towel over your face, or what? He took a selfie with you. Is that what you're saying?
Basically, he just stood to the side, had his little brown suit on, and I just went over there with handcuffs in front and not smiling, of course. He just took a picture with me, and then from there they took me down to their prison, and that's where they interrogated us again for 5 days, without shower, without a bed, without anything other than just a chair and a video camera in my face. They didn't actually torture me during those 5 days. My wife had it a lot harder than I did. We go into big detail about that, but she was tortured a little bit because they wanted her basically to sign a paper stating that I did all these bad things. And she said, no, I love him. I know who he is. And I know he wouldn't do those things. And they started threatening her, the life of her and her children, saying that she'd never see her children again, and she never budged. We'd only been married 2 weeks at this time, and my entire life was in her hands, and I had no idea. But luckily, we had angels that were sent there to protect us, people that said to her, hey, stay strong. He's saying the same thing you're saying.
Torture for women can be much different from torture for men. I was talking to my wife and I thought, how much hell is there knowing that your wife's over there being interrogated by these monsters?
Oh, man, it's horrible.
Oh, man.
When I found out that they put her finger into pencil sharpeners and were running tasers around her body, it just made me angry. It's not something that I can explain. And not even just her, but hearing and seeing and witnessing other people being tortured. Literally tortured is the worst thing that a person could ever endure.
You wouldn't expect to hear about that in an egalitarian country like democratic socialist Venezuela. You were thrown into a military prison for basically like the Chateau d'If of military supposed opponents of Maduro. That's got a name. It's called a hexagonal or spiral. What is the prison called?
Helicoid?
Helicoid. Yeah, that's it. Tell me, let's stick on torture. Like, what did you see? What happened there? And who was being tortured?
So I saw lots of different things. With this government, they do lots of things, lots of bad things. For instance, one of the diplomats was recently just killed. They basically tortured him to death, then threw him off the top of their building, saying that he committed suicide. The coroner realized that he didn't die from the fall, but that he died from being tortured to death. So he fled to Colombia, fleeing for his life because the police were after him in order to tell the world what really happened. And then after that happened, they covered it up through letting people go or through trying to let something good to happen, basically. Police, and I've heard this story multiple times, and this actually happened to one of the people in the morning that I was taken. But the police will show up, they'll get in a shootout, they'll go in when the guy gives up, they'll go in, just shoot the guy, and then turn around and shoot the walls. Or even if the guy doesn't have, the guy in the morning where my wife lived, police walked in, he had a baby that was sleeping on him, and he was asleep. He took the baby away from him, shot him in the head, turned around, shot the wall, and put the gun in his hand. And they said that he was firing upon them. So they do lots of bad things. I mean, there's people that were in the jail that I saw being literally just strung up by their arms and feet with handcuffs. I, for one, had to work out naked in front of these people for a half hour. I mean, I don't know why they wanted to see me naked for a half hour, but there's just things that they did. I mean, I remember one time.
Josh, you're a good-looking guy. I mean, no, I'm a straight married man, but you are an attractive man. Just throw that out there right now.
Oh, thank you. So. No, there was one time where I was asleep in my head. It was kind of like this right here, where the wall was right here. Okay. And I was sleeping, and I was awoken by the sound of grunts and the sound of just, like, I don't know, the sound of, you can hear the fist hitting against something. And I knew it was happening. And so I went to my door and I just started screaming. I started saying lots of bad things. I woke everyone up and everyone started screaming at the guards. I mean, it was just right there, right in the hallway, right next to us. And he's just sitting there beating this guy to death. It's just not okay.
I think I read in one of the articles they used the word crucify, that they would string people up to rails and walls and actually leave them there to die. Mm-hmm. And when back to San Felipe, when I was a teenager, when this news started coming out about the corruption of La Policia, what would happen is when I was young, they would drive old VW Bugs and old Mercury Cougars and all these old beat up cars, and you'd see La Policia spray painted across them. In high school, they would have brand new Tahoes and Suburbans and Jeeps. And the rumors were that they were taking Americans, pulling them out of their cars and shooting them and leaving them on the side of the road or killing them or whatever. So we actually got a lawyer in San Diego to investigate this. And one of our friends down there was thrown into prison under false sexual abuse accusations. Went on for 2 or 3 years. And eventually there was a prison riot and we got him out of prison. His daughter had been married off to someone he hardly knew that was related to the person who accused him of this. His son had died of some medical malpractice thing that would have never happened in the United States unless it was at the VA. His wife had passed away. Like his life, I mean, you're still a young guy, but I think about the hell this man endured. He came out and said, I hold no ill will and no remorse towards anyone that's done anything wrong to me because I've seen things. Like I've been in a prison where I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. And I read in the papers that the last prison riot, I think it was in Mexicali, was so bad that the guys were streaming over the walls and breaking them down. They went in there and they found out that they had been decapitating rival gang members with odds and ends and using their heads as soccer balls. And it really was a numbers game, like who can kill the most amount of people to make sure they survive and get out of the prison. And he was in there for several years. And I thought, I wonder if that, like, did Josh see? I remember meeting Manuel after that. He's much older than me, and just seeing how broken he was, and just he appreciated the air that he breathed. Like, he was Eckhart Tolle manifested, like just taking one breath at a time and being grateful to not be in that place anymore. Is that what we're talking about here? Or is it, because I actually read in some places that you were treated well. I didn't know if that was propaganda or if that was just to, for them to use you as a bargaining chip.
I would say, 100%. That I can't tell you, TJ, how disappointed I am in the United States. Just to see the way that we fight against each other. I mean, we're supposed to be one country. We're supposed to be united. That's why it's called United States of America. And we are nowhere near united. In the past, 4.5 years that I've been out of the world, just because I served 2 years up in Washington and as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, we don't focus on anything worldly. We focus on those that are around us and helping them. So for the last 4.5 years, I haven't seen the world really, and now it's just my eyes are the things that I've seen. I'm just so shocked. I can't believe that we allow the things to happen that are happening. And we literally have one news station that just literally tears apart our government and people and never reports anything positive. I mean, the thing that I do with my life now, or that I want to accomplish, is spreading positivity. If we don't have positivity in our lives, if we're not grateful, if we don't forgive one another, we're going to drown in our own grief. We're going to drown in our own sadness. And I can tell you that 100% just because of the things that I went through. I got to a point while I was over there that I thought that killing myself was the way out. I honestly did. And it wasn't just because I didn't want to be there anymore, but it was to end the pain, to end the sorrow, to end the sadness. And look at America right now. Look at how many suicides are going on. I mean, it's just, we need to do something. We need to change something. It needs to happen now. And I know, without a doubt, that that's through positivity, through positive mindset, through forgiveness.
When I want to stick on this theme, but I also want to ask you about when you're there, how do you keep your head down? Like, there's some movies about being in a prison. Shawshank Redemption's, I think Shawshank Redemption is the most overrated movie ever created. Everyone loves it, but it's the Christian's the really bad guy. He's the devil. The policeman's the evil guy, and all the prisoners are the fun guys that didn't do anything wrong, which has always frustrated me. So of course it's popular, but I'll probably do a video on that someday, like how screwed up that movie's plot actually is, and how we just take it for granted that it's this awesome movie. Stephen King. So, but what I'm curious about is, like, how do you keep your head down? I read articles about staying out of the fray. There's all the gangs. There are some legit political dissidents there and some really bad players. Like, how do you keep them from killing you? You're still the gringo. I mean, I look at you and go, yeah, I could see you being from Utah. Like, I'd recognize you from Venezuela. What do you do?
Yeah. So this is actually funny, TJ. After 2 weeks of being there, I got moved into my second cell. And that second cell, I ended up sleeping a foot away from one of the most 10 wanted people from Venezuela.
Wow.
And you might laugh at this, but I became really great friends with him. I've always been taught not to judge. I didn't judge him. I got to know who he was, and I got to know what was inside of him. And he, even though he'd done, all these horrible things, he'd killed over 100 cops, over 100 people. I could root all of his sadness and all of his anger back to his childhood, and I could see where he was. And I actually taught him, because I was a return missionary, I actually taught him the lessons that I would teach people of our gospel out in the world, and he enjoyed it. I taught him, that God still loved him, and I believe that 100%. And so the way that I would say I stay out of trouble was, one, if trouble was happening, I got away from it. Two, I didn't judge a single person, and I had tough skin because people like to talk, especially Venezuelans. They talk and they talk and they talk. And most of the time, it's just they like to have fun with you. They don't actually talk really bad. There was one guy that I actually became really great friends with, and I actually still communicate with him to this day. The first time I actually met him, he came up to me and he got just right here, right in my face, and he started saying, bad things to me, and I was just like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. Just had tough skin. And I got pretty close to wanting to clock the guy, but I just stayed strong, and that's what I did. I stayed in my area, stayed on my bed, really is what it was, and I just got to know people for who they were and didn't judge them.
So you are a spy. You're a gun runner. Maybe you're a drug runner. I don't know for sure. Tell us about the realization. At what point did you, going back to Shawshank, you got the fresh fish, people freaking out on their first night. When did it sink in that this was your new reality, that you could be in there a long time, if not, you could die there? When did that start? How long does it take before you start accepting that as fate?
Well, I think it was about 7 months. Maybe 5 to 7 months was really the point where I was like, all right, this is going to be here for a while. And I say that because I had lots of positive people talking to me, telling me different things about Americans and how they're never there that long, and how, because the Sabine and the jail that I was at, there was so much corruption. There were so many things that are happening that are against human rights that everyone thought that this government wouldn't want me anywhere near it. And so that they would take me out of there as fast as they could. And so I really hoped on that. I did everything I needed to do. I had a positive mindset. For myself, I stayed strong to who I was, to my faith, praying, fasting every single week. I did, everything I needed to do to keep my mind where it needed to be. But when the court dates would come and they wouldn't take us, or they'd take us and we would just stay underneath and then they'd say deferred. And that would go, week after week after month after month. And people said, once you get to 7 months or so, 6, 7 months, then you know that you're going to be here for a while. And so that's when I finally realized that, we were screwed, that I was going to die in there. That's honestly what I thought.
Wow. And then just tell me a little bit about, I know that there were several senators and a lot of political officials involved in getting you out of the country, out of that prison, that hellhole. But I don't know that much about the politics of it. I know there were people who theorized that you were a bargaining chip, that they were basically trying to punish the United States for sanctions put on their country because of things they'd done. Did you know about any of this, or did you learn it all after the fact, after you got out?
Oh, yeah. I was in there. After about a year, I got a phone where I could really be able to communicate with my family. Everyone in this jail had a phone. Everyone. The corruption is it's amazing in Venezuela. You can get anything anywhere. So after about a year, I finally was able to get a hold of a phone and have a little bit of communication with my family. And from that point on, I got a little bit better phone, and then I finally got a smartphone. And I was seeing the things that were happening. And not only that, but Senator Marco Rubio, he's from Florida. He literally screwed me over. And there were people in the White House that were screwing me over, that were stopping my exit, my freedom from this prison.
Whoa, go on. I'm intrigued.
The way that they would actually go about throwing my name out there was at the time when I was supposed to be getting my freedom. They knew that a senator, or they knew that a congressperson, or they knew that someone from our government was going down to Venezuela to try to get me freed, and then they'd start up really hard on human rights and how I wasn't being treated correctly, this and that. They had no idea what I was going through. They had no idea who I was. They had never talked to my family. I actually had government officials from Venezuela come into the jail, pull me out of my cell, and look at me and tell me, if this person doesn't shut his mouth, you'll be here forever. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? I don't have his number, I don't have a way to communicate with him to tell him to shut his mouth. And that's the way I was treated. I was treated as a bargaining chip. I finally was freed because a senator decided to go to a place where he wasn't supposed to go. Well, no, that sounds really bad. He said he was going to go to Honduras, and instead, as soon as he left the United States airspace, he went right over to Venezuela. When he landed in Venezuela, he went right up to President Maduro, and that's how he got our freedom. I mean, it's a little more in depth than that, and there was a lot more steps and a lot more people that connected, with that, especially Caleb McCurry, Senator Hatch, Mia Love, and I go in depth in our book about that. But those were the people that really helped us get out of there.
I'm going to encourage everyone to buy your book, but I'm really curious. You've got a democratic socialist dictator like Maduro. He's got to be a paranoid guy. He's obviously aware of his situation. What do you know about that conversation, that interaction? Because as I understand it, there were no bargaining chips. There were no strings attached. You just got out. You were surprised to get out, and that was it. True or false?
I couldn't tell you, to tell you the truth. I mean, there are lots of different things that have happened, and I'm still, once I get to that point, I'm really going to communicate well with the people that helped me get freed. Okay. But from what I do know, the riot that happened a week before I was freed, there are people that say that didn't help at all, that what was happening was already planned. But there are also other people that beg to difference on that. They think that did light, a fire under some people's butts, and that's one of the main reasons why we got freed. I think they're just, and it's actually kind of funny when we got freed. The senator called the White House. The White House was upset that I got my freedom, and he said, "I just need to talk to the president." When he got President Trump on the phone, President Trump was ecstatic. He was like, "I want to see him here tomorrow." And he was happy. And it just shows you the difference that we have in our government, the different layers of I want to say corruption, because we do have corruption in our own government.
Sure.
It's not like, what you're going to see in Mexico and Venezuela, to where people are literally just dying all over the place because of the corruption. But here, I mean, we do have, our own type of corruption.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about the United States and getting along and unity. And it's funny that I've done a lot of interviews with historians, and we talk about how we refer to ourselves not so much as a country, but as a nation, but a union up until about the time of the Civil War. A lot of the founding fathers and early writers would refer to us as a union of states, not a nation of states. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of power in that word. But as I've traveled, I was in Honduras when things started to get pretty bad. It's now the murder capital of the world. Went to Tegucigalpa, went to San Pedro Sula, Salta, went to Roatan, and kind of traveled around some of those areas and seen the way they live and things they have to deal with. I remember being in Mexico when the cops would pull you over. When I was a little kid, it was $10 to get off, then it was 20, then it was 50. And before my great grandfather died, it was 100. And he would turn and go, "It's getting expensive to come down here and go fishing." And you would say, "Dalo juez," right? Give it to the judge. I don't have time to go see him. Just hand it to the judge. And they'd say, "Okay, amigo, on your way." And when people rail against the type of government we have and what a horrible person Donald Trump is, now corrupt our politicians are, I think it really is sad how mal-educated they are. And I deal with this at work where I have to keep my mouth shut, and other places that I go and think they just don't know. And I think that's one of the reasons I want to have you on, is maybe there was a little bit of that with you, but now you go there to a democratic socialist country and you see how fragile those rights are. You see how fragile the presumption of innocence is, and why this idea took thousands of years to manifest itself in civilization, Judeo-Christian civilization, as a fundamental, inalienable human right. And what happens when it's gone? I mean, literally, you go from being a regular guy enjoying time with your wife to wanting to kill yourself because of these democratic socialists who can basically do whatever they want with you. Your life has no meaning, only what they say it has.
Mm-hmm. It's Cuba, and if you look into Cuba, the things that are happening there are ridiculous. I mean, I've heard plenty of stories, and it surprises me, and that's what shocks me most about how and the things that are happening in the United States, because people have no idea what they have. They have no idea the freedoms that we have, the rights that we have. There are so many people in this world that actually don't have those rights, and to us, it's just unfathomable. It's not something that we can really believe in. Before all this stuff happened to me, I never once believed that people still get tortured. Never once believed that if I go to a different country that I was going to be my life was going to be threatened. And look what happened.
The interesting takeaway for me is my wife has family. We call them the Christian socialists, where it's a lot of, egalitarian, everyone's equal. We should give to all. There should be open borders. Like the way that Jesus would want things, which is basically we don't need any of these laws. And I look at it slightly different. It must be somewhat frustrating for you to hear people who have I keep saying democratic socialist because Venezuela was supposed to be the country that got it right. Before that, it was going to be Cuba. And before that, it was going to be Vietnam, like all these countries that had it figured out. And Venezuela is a hellhole. Pardon me if your wife doesn't still agree, but it is. I know. Is one of her daughters still there? Or did you get her back too?
No, yeah, we have both of them here.
Okay.
Her entire family has fled from Venezuela. They actually started going after her family once we got freed.
Fled's a good word. Tell me how frustrating it is for you to overhear people, maybe that you don't know or that you don't know that well, talk about how they and I interviewed Paul Kengor, who's a specialist on communism and socialism, and say people throw out these terms as if they have no meaning, as if there's not a stack of bodies that word is built up on. People talk about Alexander Ocasio-Cortez like these ideas are new and revolutionary and they're going to make everybody happy. You lived it. How does it just drive you nuts when you hear that?
I try not to get into politics.
Okay.
I mean, I know we're talking about it today, and I talk about it with other people as well. But to tell you the truth, that part of the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not lie, that is like the biggest, most broken commandment that I've ever seen. Because most of these people just lie to get people to like them, to get people to vote for them. And then afterwards, the things that they do is just horrible. And so that's what bothers me the most, is to see people vote for someone that doesn't do what they say. But at the same time, we have to vote someone in. And so if they're both lying, we just got to figure out from past who is the right person to go with.
Yeah, I guess I would reframe it as, to me, we say we don't get into politics, but I look at it as if you adopt a certain culture, a certain lifestyle, a certain set of values, eventually there are consequences. And Venezuela crumbled in one generation. And so
really fast.
It's amazing. So I phrase it as all sin is rooted in deception. Like you said, lying is where it all starts. You have to either deceive someone else or deceive yourself. And Josh, I just want to thank you for coming on. I know that you're trying to use this experience to bless people's lives and to help people improve their own lives. I know that you're doing a lot of public speaking. You're working on a book. What else can you tell us about what's in the future for you and your family?
So yeah, we're currently working on a book and a documentary. So I'm really excited for those two things. I have some people that are producers for movies that are looking into us as well. I have a podcast that might be coming out here pretty soon.
Cool.
But what I really want to focus on, what you talked about, was motivational speaking, doing keynotes. I've done right around 8 of them thus far, and they've been great. They've been great experiences. I've gotten great feedback. I basically tell my story from beginning to the end, and throughout it I talk about the importance of positivity, the importance of having a great mindset, and the importance of forgiveness and unity. Those are the things that every single person in this world need to know and need to conquer. I went through something tough, yeah, but you and everyone else, especially all the people that are watching this video today, are going through or have gone through something hard. And I want to do whatever I can to help people get through those times. I mean, if I had to go through something that hard, I see it as an opportunity to help other people get through what they have to go through. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, really getting my name out there and letting people know that, hey, if you have any type of company, any type of event where you would like me to come and share my story and share the way I can help you and your team become better, then just let me know.
I will definitely link that in the notes below and share it out. Is there a release date planned for the book, or is it still too early to talk about that?
It's still too early. We're finishing up the proposal right now. We have about 6 publishers in New York that are interested.
Awesome.
They're all wanting. We basically sent them a small proposal at first, and they're all like, yeah, we're interested in this, but we need more. So they wanted the full-on proposal, which ends up being like a chapter and a half. They want to see, how it's going to roll out, what the writing is like. So I'm working with a guy named Duncan McNabb, and hopefully me and him can come to terms and find a good publisher and get the book out within next year, hopefully.
Well, I wish you luck. I wish the best for your family. Chances are we'll speak again when the book releases. We'll do some promo. But in the meantime, let me know if you ever need any help with anything. And it's unfortunate that when they are trying their best to fill a 24-hour news cycle, that some of the more powerful events and stories seem to be forgotten. But I think your story is going to have a lifetime of a push, because people are going to have experiences like yours, and they're going to resonate with your story, because our rights are precious and they're God-given, and they can be taken away if we're not standing watch over them. So, Josh, best of luck to you. I wish we could have talked about your mama bear. I heard some stories that she really dug her heels in deep and made some people's lives uncomfortable. But,
yeah, she did.
It's exciting that you guys are back together as a family, and all the best to you.
Thanks, TJ. You have a great day.
All right. Take care.